Good morning, internets. It is a really beautiful day here in Las Vegas, Nevada. The temperature this morning is 55 degrees, and I started out with a range of 37 miles on the 2012 Chevy Volt Premium for those of you still keeping score at home. I've really enjoyed everyone's data over the course of the winter. However, and I still want you guys to keep sending it to me, but very soon my data is not going to be very useful for you anymore. And the reason for that is that winter here appears to already be over. The only reason I'm wearing a sweater right now is because the place I'm going to is usually kept pretty cold on the inside of it. But it's perfectly comfortable outside right now. And our high for today is 72. So for those of you on the East Coast or in cold European countries, neener. I actually am really sad that we don't have winter here. I grew up in a place with a lot of winter in northern Nevada. But you know what? Even Washoe County up here, far north of me, about a 9-hour drive where I grew up, hasn't really gotten a whole lot of snow on the valley floor, hasn't really gotten a whole lot of weather to be talked about at all. But, hey man, that's what it is. So, there you go. And let's see, what I want to talk about today is range anxiety. So the reason for this is, every time I talk to people about the car I drive, which is often because I'm into cars, which you guys may or may not have noticed at this point, one of the first things they ask is, oh my God, what's your range on that thing? And they get anxious. The range anxiety is a very real phenomena. And people even get range anxiety by proxy when they hear that you drive an electric car. As soon as I explain that this is an extended range EV and that I have the gas powered generator, etc., people tend to chill out a little bit, which is good. But most EVs are not extended range like this is. So people still get that. They tend to bristle at the idea of driving an electric car. And, I want to talk about that for a minute. The National Transportation Authority, the NTA, says that most Americans drive on average around, those of us that drive to and from work and all that, drive around, 30 to 35 miles a day, which is why Chevy wanted to make the Volt battery pack range 40 miles so that it would exceed the needs of the average American when it came to the driving. And then, of course, they put the extended range feature on it. So with most people not driving more than 40 miles a day in the United States, why are so many people still freaking out about electric cars that only have a range of, say, 95 miles, like some of the Nissan Leafs? Or, even Tesla, they're like, yeah, but the range. And I think there are a couple of reasons for this. One is how instant everything is now. Everything's now. We have fast food and fast streaming and instant download and instant everything all of the time. So people don't like the idea of having to wait for something. Like the idea that at some point in the future, they might be at a charging station and have to wait for their vehicle to recharge for 40 minutes or so really tends to bother people. And they have there's always this tone that they adopt with it. It was like, I don't have time to wait for that. And I used to hear that and think like, oh my God, it's not that big a deal. But come to think of it, I don't have 40 minutes in the middle of the day either. I don't. I barely have 4 minutes in the middle of the day. The reason that all of my videos are made during my commute, either to or from work, is because that's the only time that I really have to make them. It's very difficult to find time for anything, and people are just getting busier and busier all the time. So people really don't like the idea of having to wait. Now we're talking about some of these supercharge stations where they're trying to get shorter and shorter charge times, and especially for Teslas, and that's really awesome, but people still have to sit and wait, and they don't like that idea. They want to fill up with gasoline, which takes, 3 minutes tops, and then while they're at the gas station, they can get coffee, they can get the soda, they can get whatever, modulated, plastified caffeine beverage and or snack to, falsely energize them and get them through the next arbitrary task, which is the way we live in America. And I'm not saying I'm a terribly huge fan of it, but hey guys, that's just what it is. It's very difficult to tell people like, hey, you have to sit and wait. So that's one of the things about range anxiety that I think freaks people out. Another thing is that even if a person only drives 10 miles a day, every day, 365 days a year, they still like their gas burning car because we live in such a big country that they like the idea of, oh, if I want to go to Grand Teton National Park tomorrow, I can just do that. That's just a thing I can do. I don't have to get anybody's permission. I don't have to look up where the charging stations are. I don't have to plan my trip around where I can charge my vehicle. I can just get in my car and go and not plan any gasoline style. Nobody ever plans for gasoline. Nobody ever plans, like all of the fuel stops. Now there are a couple of select places in Nevada. We have, the loneliest highway out here, where there are signs that say, hey, no fuel or water for several hundred miles. That's a very, very rare exception to this. For the most part, anywhere you go on the interstate system here in America, you don't have to plan for gasoline. You don't. Your car has enough range to get you to the next gas station, and that includes going across a place as big as Texas. It's not, you just get in your car and you go, and when you start running on empty, you stop and there will be gas there. It's very rare that you're going to end up in a situation where gasoline isn't available. But you could end up in a situation where charge stations aren't available, and that is the thing that ticks people off. So rather than being more demanding of more electric car friendly infrastructure, people just tend to, and this is just from my experience and conversations I've had with people just tend to accept that, electric vehicles just aren't there yet. It's just not there yet. The technology's not there yet. The supporting infrastructure is just not there yet. Maybe in a couple of years I'll look again. And then they get another gas car and they, drive their little gas cars and wait for electric vehicle infrastructure to magically appear without personally demanding it. And that to me seems a little counterintuitive. I understand it. I needed a car. Even I fell prey to this, the range anxiety thing to a point, because I didn't buy a pure electric vehicle, guys. Like, the Volt is an extended range. I have a gas burning generator in this thing that makes electricity for the car to run on freight train style. Whenever, I run out of my base charge. And I run out of my base charge literally every day. Yesterday, I drove, with all of the places I had to go and all the things I had to do, yesterday was 100.4 miles. 100.4. That was how many miles I drove yesterday, just doing my life. That's all that happened. Like, there wasn't anything extraordinary. I didn't have to go, pick anything up in a different county. Like, none of that stuff happened. I just had to drive 100 miles yesterday. So I exceed the range of the Volt literally every weekday. It's very rare that I do on the weekends, because on the weekends I go to my hometown car show, the car show on Eastern on Saturday mornings, and that's not very far from my home. And I run my errands and I kind of stay in my neighborhood. I don't drive across town unless I have to, because I don't like driving across town. Las Vegas locals, if you guys don't know, if you've never been to Las Vegas, or if you've been to Las Vegas but you stayed on the Strip the whole time, you don't really understand the city. This is a huge place, and I live on the east side of the Strip, and there's east side people and there are west side people, and if you live on the east side, you're gonna find ways to not go to the west side if you don't have to, and vice versa, because the freeway system here is not as great as it could be for the number of people that we have. I take the 215 every morning, even though it's less direct than the 95. The 95 cuts straight from the south part of town where I live to the north part of town where I work, but it's so congested and so covered in construction that it's basically unusable. So I drive the entire rim of the valley to get where I'm going, because it's the only way I can reliably get to where I need to be on time. And that adds, roughly 10 miles each direction. So I'm adding 20 miles to my commute each day, but I'm shaving off more than an hour. So we have these weird set of circumstances in this valley, and it's a really big place. I do see a lot of electric cars here. I see a lot of Teslas. I see a lot of Nissans, a lot of the Nissan Leafs. Is it a Nissan? What is the plural? Are they Nissan Leafs? Do we change that? Do we pluralize that the way we would if it were grammatically correct? Or because it is a name brand, do we just put an S on the end of it? Is it Nissan Leafs or Nissan Leaves? Y'all tell me. I really want to know. I want to know what Nissan says. Don't have any idea. But, electric cars are getting more and more affordable, and you can get them. Not only are the newer ones, more and more companies are making new cars all the time. The Chevy Bolt, which is, Volt with a B, Chevy Bolt, is a really, really cool little car. And it's smaller than the Volt, but it's all electric. It's not an extended range EV. It's just an all electric, pure electric car. And I actually have a viewer on this channel that has done road trips in his Bolt, and he did not get stranded in the wilderness. He was not eaten by buzzards and coyotes, and in fact had a very nice time. He just had to do a little bit of planning first, and keep track of where the charge stations were. And when he was at a charge station, he found ways to occupy himself, and that is how he got through his road trip. He did his entire road trip and got what he needed to do done, and went where he needed to go, and had a nice time, and did it all with zero emissions. And think about those of you who road trip, and road tripping it's at the core of American culture. It's really close to our center, because when the cars started getting more and more available to the people, and the American government passed all of those acts in order to build our interstate infrastructure, all of a sudden you could get places that you couldn't get before. And this is, during the 1950s and 60s. All of a sudden the whole country opened up, and you could get from one end of this continent to the other on paved roads in American cars. These big hulking masses of machinery, and gas was cheap, and you could just get in and go and just cruise for literally thousands of miles across North America and go see what there was to see. And people got to know their country for the first time. And even though our generation is, I'm 30, guys, even though people my age have no memory of that period of time at all, and even though for the most part our parents really don't have much of a, people my age, our parents don't have much of a memory of that time. They were small children at that time. They remember riding in the backs of those cars, and they have passed those memories on down to us. And one of the things that those memories don't include is stopping at a charge station for 2.5 hours. They don't have that. So I think part of the reason that people, tend to bristle at the idea of buying an electric car is it's not in keeping with that cultural norm of just being able to get in your car and go and move of your own volition, and to go do your own thing, and you gas up wherever the hell you want, and so long as you got the cash for the gas, you can go do whatever you please. And people like that about being an American. People like that about this great big continent, and they want to hang on to it. They don't like the idea of having to stop and charge. So what are the solutions to this, guys? One, I think we need more charge stations, more places. Now here in Las Vegas, we actually have decent infrastructure if you know where to look. If you download the PlugShare app on your phone and just use it wherever you go, you start to get to know the charge stations in your neighborhood, and you can kind of maybe choose to patron businesses that have those charge points. And in Vegas, a lot of the time, very, very, very often, the charge points are actually free, because they want you to be there for a couple of hours and hopefully spend some money while you're there. And that is, understandable. It's pretty cool, really. 1 second. Lane change. Safely. Yes, thank you, Kia. Alrighty. But people don't like the idea of having to compromise and shorten the distance that they can travel. They don't like the idea that they can't just get in their car and take off whenever the hell they want. I'm about to pass a giant piece of construction machinery, and you guys know I cannot focus when that happens. Ah, it's so cool! It looks like a great big forklift. I would lift so much stuff with it. I don't have stuff to lift with that, but I would do it anyway. I would find heavy stuff and I would move it just because I could. Oh, so cool. I want to play with it really bad. All right, I'm back. But people, and I know that Las Vegas has a lot of electric cars because I see them every day, so I know our infrastructure here must be decent. It must be less decent in other places. I haven't taken this car to Los Angeles yet. Now, I do have family in LA, and eventually that is something that is going to happen. And when I do, don't worry, I'll make a lot of media to document what we find for charge stations in the Los Angeles basin. But I imagine it being LA and extremely Southern California and totally progressive all the time, that I'm not going to have a hard time finding charge points. But in other places, like maybe if I lived in rural Kansas, I'm probably not going to want a Tesla. Maybe if I lived in some places in Louisiana, I'm probably not going to want a Tesla. Maybe if I lived in the middle of Texas, I don't know that I would necessarily want a Chevy Bolt. So these are things to consider, because America, I mean, we mostly live in our cities. The majority of the population now lives in cities. That is the way of the future. So we live in our cities, and we live our entire lives in our cities, and very rarely leave them. But most of our country is great expanse of open space. We have a national park system that is vast. And, well, for now, it's getting gutted pretty hard right now. Maybe we'll make another video about that later. But there's so many places to go, and there's so much to see, and a lot of people don't see a way to do that while also making room for charging their electric car, and I think that's a real shame. So I think those are the reasons that I think range anxiety impacts people and the way it impacts people. But I want to know what you guys think. For those of you that drive electric cars, how do non-electric car people react when you tell them about your car, when they ask you what you drive, or when you talk about it? Like, how high on their list of questions is, what's the range? Because for me, it's like every time, number one, how far can you go in that thing? And I'm like, as far as as long as all the tires are inflated, it'll just go as though it were a car. Because that's what extended range means. But for those of you that drive pure electric vehicles, how often do the people around you freak out? How often do they be like, oh, be careful, you don't want to get stranded? And I've heard that one a lot. Like, thank you for the advice. You also do not want to get stranded. So also be careful. How do people react to your electric cars? For those of you that drive pure electric vehicles and non-extended range cars or non-hybrids, how do you find it difficult to find places to charge, or do you even need places to charge? Does your life allow you to just go about your business and just charge at home at nighttime? I'm really interested to hear those things. I also want to give a very special shout out to Alyssa, my bug. I love your face so much. I found out last night that she went through and watched every single one of the 60 videos that I had uploaded so far. I believe this one is 61. And you're an angel, and I love your face, Buggenstein. So she gets a special shout out, and I think that's all I got today, guys. So if you've had a good time on the channel, I really appreciate you watching. Please consider subscribing right over here. So there's some other things we think you'll enjoy right down here. My name is Catherine with EVs of Nevada. I hope everybody's having a really great Wednesday. Please remember to like, subscribe, and smile.